Okay, well, it's so nice to meet you. And so, kind of how I do is I like reread the profile and stuff and see where I want to start. And you do so much work around the word purpose. I kind of wanted to start with what you believe your purpose is, and if you believe that people have like an individual purpose and a collective purpose, like something like that. So I'd like to know kind of how you discovered your own purpose.
Um, I discovered my purpose, um, really organically. It literally took me decades.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I started a business where the point of the business was to help companies define what makes them uniquely remarkable. The one thing at their essence that makes them uniquely remarkable. And I started to think about that for me as an individual. And my business partner had a quick answer for that for him, which was causing wow. And as soon as I heard that, I said, that's perfect for you. It's perfect because it's logically correct and self evident, but it also, you know, it grabs you at a deep emotional level, especially if you're in a situation where you need causing wow,
Right.
right? If you don't need causing wow and he says causing wow, you'd say, oh, that's interesting. But if you're
Yeah.
in a situation where you need causing wow and he says, I'm all about causing wow, you're like, oh my God, you're the person I'm looking for. Right.
Yeah.
So, um, I started thinking about mine and and about what my talent was. What did I do in the business that actually contributed to the value of the business? And what I did is I deconstructed stuff. So clients would come into us with complex problems that they keep shelving them because they couldn't solve them. Excuse me. And so my partner and I would sit them down and we would take them through this process of deconstructing their problem from the complex to the simple. And when you can deconstruct it to the simple, all of a sudden, the solution seems self evident. It pops out and it's so self evident. And you can then look back up to the complex level and say, does it work? And you go, yeah, yeah, it does. It does. So that's really what my talent is to take people through a process. And it's a painstaking process because don't forget, these are intractable problems that they've come to me because they've tried so hard to solve it themselves and they can't. And I just have this process, right? And what I realized is that I was taking these people from a condition of being confused about something to a condition of being clear about it.
Yeah.
And that clarity is game changing. And so I came up with the phrase transforming confusion into clarity. And when I did, it was like, oh my God, yes, that's my passion. That's what I love to do. That's who I am. And I can look in my personal life. I can look all around. I can look everywhere in my life. And I'm having the most fun when I'm helping transform confusion into clarity in whatever I'm doing.
So that leads me to something you made me want to ask, which is, do you feel like you do different versions of that even in your personal life?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So one of the things that I love to do is coach kids. I loved it when my son was young and was playing hockey. And I thought that adults made hockey way too complex for kids. Especially we're talking house league here, right? We're
Yeah.
not talking about kids who are going to make a living out of this.
Mhm.
So I came up with a way of simplifying how they play. And I watched a team that was really sort of middle of the pack in terms of its talent come together and lose in the championship. The fact that they were in the championship was incredible.
Big
They
deal.
lost.
Yeah,
Who cares?
yeah,
We got there. And there was this one situation, so I really simplified. I don't want to get too detailed here because I know a lot of your listeners are probably not hockey fans. But what I wanted to do is I wanted to simplify how they played in their own end, right? Defending
yeah,
their own goal. And so I there was a kid who was like he was either the worst or the second worst kid on the team. And I just gave him this really simple job to do when they were defending in their own end. You stand right beside this guy who's a good player and you don't leave his side. And what happened was that player got so frustrated that he started hitting my guy with his stick. And I watched it, my guy just ignored it.
yeah.
And he came off the ice and I said, "You know what that means, don't you?" And he said, "Yeah, I'm doing my job. I'm driving him crazy." And I loved that he loved that. This guy
Yeah,
had no skill, right? He was the second worst player on the team, yet he
that.
had a role and he did it so well that he could self-identify how well he was doing it.
Yeah, I love
Sorry.
that. I
Yeah, yeah,
love
yeah, yeah.
that. And I can relate so much to what you're saying your talent is, because I feel like, in a different way, but the same, I feel like that's kind of one of my gifts is to share information in a way that people just digest easier than if they were to take
Right.
it in on their own. So I totally resonate with that. And I love that you have such a beautiful example of how you do that in another area of your life and not just in business. Cause I feel like, as we discuss how purpose impacts us, or at least a sense of purpose and passion, that's like so far beyond what you're doing for work. We have to have some sense of why we want to get up to do the work that we're doing in the first place. And I think we each kind of come across what we believe is to be our passion and purpose in our own organic way. And I think it can mean something different for each of us as well. So, I felt like a relatively the same sense of purpose my whole life. It shifts as my environment shifts, but not
Well,
everybody
probably
does that.
the application of your purpose shifts, but your purpose doesn't shift.
Right.
Well,
Yeah.
how you execute your purpose, right?
Right.
That can
Yeah.
shift,
Yeah. Absolutely. Well,
right?
and as I shift a little bit too, I mean, because when you get expanded consciousness or just a different paradigm of something, then it's so much easier to be like, oh, wow, I thought I knew that. And then now I have a deeper understanding. So I liked in your profile how you said that, you used to focus more on, I'm paraphrasing this, so I may not get it exactly right, but you handing a blueprint over to companies and then you figured out even a way for individuals to learn how to access their
Right,
blueprint. Yeah, so what was
right.
that process like? And why were you interested in that? What sparked that?
Well, it's important to know the definition of purpose to answer this question. It's a great question. Um, but one of my frustrations in the world of purpose is that anything that you read, anytime you hear people talking about it, they talk about the benefits of purpose, and I totally buy into that. They talk about all this, what you'll feel, what you'll get, blah, 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 but nobody tells you what purpose is. And so while everybody buys into purpose, nobody does it. Nobody figures out their purpose. No companies figure out their purpose. I mean, some do, but
Yeah,
very
yeah.
few. And and so, um, Pablo Picasso has a great quote. I loved it as soon as I saw it. He said, "The meaning of life is to find your gift, and your purpose is to share it with the world." Right? The meaning of life is to find your gift, and your purpose is to share it with the world. And all he's really saying is figure out who the best possible you is,
Mhm.
and then share that with the world. And that made so much sense to me as a definition of purpose because for a number of reasons. One is It's not something out there, right? It's gotta be your purpose has to be something that's inside you, not
Yeah.
something out there. So your purpose is not, some variation of saving the world or, helping poor people or saving the climate or something like that. Those are applications of your purpose. Those
Yeah.
are the things that you do that hopefully are aligned with your purpose. But your purpose is your gift, if you buy what I'm saying about this Picasso quote. Now,
Yeah.
when I saw that quote, I said, "Oh, wait a sec. For the past 15 years, I have been helping companies define the one thing at their essence that makes them uniquely remarkable. That's their gift." So you can take Picasso's quote and you can just take out gift and put in, and so your purpose is to discover the one thing at your essence that makes you uniquely remarkable and then share it with the world. And so for me, that is transforming confusion into clarity. That's my gift. That's the one thing that makes me uniquely remarkable. My partner, well, my ex-partner, sadly, he died a few years ago. Um, but causing wow, that was his gift. And you could tell anybody who knew him, hey, this is Ken's purpose. And they'd say, oh yeah. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
Ken. Yeah, right. Um, so I told you that I had to explain the meaning of purpose in order to answer your real question, and now I've forgotten your real question.
Well, I just wondered what sparked your desire to take it from a company level to an individual level.
Right, right, right. So, well, what happened was COVID hit, right? And I said to Ken, we're not getting any business for like 18 months to 2 years. So I decided to get my coaching certification. I became a business coach. And everybody who came to me said a variation on the same thing. The pandemic has got me rethinking my life. I don't like my career. I don't like where my life is going. I want to live a life of meaning and purpose. And I said, that's awesome. What's your purpose? And they said, I don't know.
Yeah.
And so I realized, wait a sec. I've got this big behemoth over here, you know, that's designed to define what makes you uniquely remarkable as an organization. And I just took out what didn't apply to individuals, added in a bunch of stuff that did apply to individuals, and voila, you now have a personal blueprint. And so, what I did with my coaching clients is step one, define your purpose. Step two, coach you through the filter of your purpose, of knowing what makes you uniquely remarkable. And, in the coaching conversation, that helps the two of us figure out what options are better options and what options aren't. And this is really, so there's two problems in the purpose world. One is that nobody tells you what the definition is. And the other is nobody tells you the mechanics of how it works, how it actually makes your life better as opposed to just being this woo woo wonderful statement about you. It's actually a decision making tool.
Mhm.
Right? So when you're faced with an important decision in your life, let's say you let's say you're changing your career, and you can do that in one of three ways, right? It's your choice, you get laid off, you get fired. But now you've got big decisions to make. You've got a transition in your life that is and there's lots of unanswered questions in that transition. You say, "Oh, I want to leave my job. I want something new. Well, what do I want? Where do I go? How do I get that job? What if people don't want me? Am I qualified enough? Am I going to be able to, there's so many questions and now that you've heaped all these unanswered questions on yourself, you're feeling anxiety. That's what those unanswered questions do. They give you anxiety.
Mhm.
Now, then once you collect yourself, your next step is to say, well, what should I do? What are my options here? That is a really tough question to answer because it's really broad, right?
Yeah.
Anything is an option. There's no parameters in the question. If instead you were to ask, what options available to me? are aligned with my purpose, all of a sudden, woof, you now have a, much smaller subset of things, and you know that all of them are aligned with what makes you uniquely remarkable. So they're going to be viable options for you.
Yeah.
And then, so asking the question, um, what options, no matter what your situation is, you're graduating, right? And you're going out and you're starting your career, or you have a divorce, or you're retiring, or any one of these other what we call trigger events. It helps you make better decisions because the choices that you narrow yourself to, and you do want to narrow yourself,
Yeah, for
are
sure.
all aligned with what makes you uniquely remarkable. So you know that they're going to be things that A, you do well, and B, that you love doing.
Have you found that, a lot of people struggle with the concept that they are not, like, meant to do everything? Like, that they're not meant for everyone? Like, 'cause I know I went through this struggle too, even in defining, like, who my show is meant for. Everyone, like, myself and other ones that I was talking to about things like this were like, "Well, I mean, anyone." But, like, you can't say that because it's not meant for everyone, and if you don't get really clear, then you're just kinda throwing things out into the void, and once
That's
I
right.
figured that out for myself, I kinda started noticing that we all a little bit struggle with how to define who we really are trying to reach. Like, yeah, there's gonna be those outside, outliers or whatever, but I do feel like each of us with our purpose and how we're sharing our gifts, they are meant for a certain subsect of people, and I'm probably just not saying that correctly, but I think you know what I mean. So, like, did you notice people struggling with defining kinda who their target was or, how they wanted to share their gifts?
Um, I think the question, I just want to shift the perspective on this question slightly, because I don't think it's so much who you're doing this for. It's understanding who you want to be, because who you're doing it for is like-minded people,
Right.
but who is it that you want to be, right? And so if I were to decide to start a podcast, the question that I would ask before who am I trying to reach is, who do I want to be for them? Right?
Yeah.
And the answer to that question, there's a whole lot of different things I could do. I could do stuff in music because I have a huge passion for music, and especially the classic rock era, and how jazz had a huge impact on the classic rock era. That's sort of a minor of mine. Or I could do it in business, or I could do it on individuals, or whatever, but they would all be aligned with some way transforming confusion into clarity, right?
Yeah.
And and then I go out looking for people who are looking for transforming confusion into clarity, as opposed to looking for people who have these, various kind of characteristics. When you started asking the question, I thought you were going to ask a different question. That was a great question. Um, but I thought you were going to ask, do you find people don't feel they're deserving of
Oh.
good things, and there's like around 8 billion people in the world, and I'm convinced that over half of them don't think that they are anything special. And as a
Yeah.
result of, right, there's nothing that makes them special. And because of that, they don't deserve anything special, and they can't accomplish anything special.
Mhm.
And, um, until you find somebody in the world who is exactly identical to you, and identical twins are the closest that we have, and they are not identical, then there's going to be something about you that makes you uniquely remarkable. And so for those 500,000 people who think that, there's nothing special about them, if they were to discover and be able to articulate in 7 words or less, that's my standard, right? It's always got to be 7 words or less. If you can articulate what makes you uniquely remarkable, it means that you know and can say what your superpower is. That
Mhm.
means that there is something special about you. And when you learn that, your confidence goes up. And the world is still gonna, beat you up and try and knock you down, and you're gonna
Sure.
have your bad days, you're gonna have your good days. But what you're never going to lose, what you can never unlearn, is that you have a superpower that can help you out, whether the times are good or the times are bad. And that sort of elevates your baseline of confidence. And then
Yes.
the other thing is that, no matter how much you are jolted, let's say, by the shock of a trigger event, like let's say, it's a death of a loved one, or let's say, you get fired or laid off. Those are huge jolts in your life. And the first response is to sort of panic, right?
Yeah.
But to know that you have a decision making tool starts to dig you out of that hole that you're in where, it seems like your world is coming apart. At
Mhm.
least I have this tool that will help me make better decisions. And it's not an immediate panacea. It's not, you're not going to immediately feel much better. But it's gonna be faster because you're gonna be making better decisions about how to dig yourself out of this situation. Um, so, because you make a higher percentage of better decisions, you get out of tough situations faster, or you navigate tricky situations better.
Yeah, I agree. Well, I think learning to have meaning in your life by way of sharing your gifts with other people helps you through so many things. And you said builds confidence, but I wondered what other type of transformations you've seen an individual go through when they finally are able to see for themselves what their uniqueness is. I know for myself, it wasn't hard to define the uniqueness, it was hard to say it out loud and to own what my gifts were because, we're taught kinda early to not be braggy and to be humble and, don't say this or say it in this digestible way that doesn't make others feel uncomfortable, but I've learned, like, when you're really confident in what your gifts are, someone else is going to be very uncomfortable because it triggers their own insecurities or lack of understanding or whatever. But well, crap, I forgot where I was going with that. But I just wondered what other ways you've seen people transform, not just confidence, but other ways when they saw and were able to acknowledge what their uniqueness is.
Oh, well, the answer to that question is in how they actually changed their lives as a result
Mhm.
of discovering their purpose. So, I worked with this one guy, and he was the chief communications officer at a university. So he's in the C-suite on the senior management team of a university. And, like it's just like being in the C-suite of any company. You're working 12, 14 hours a day, 6 days a week. And he was about 5 years away from his retirement. He wasn't quite at his financial goal for his retirement, but it wasn't that far away. And he knew what he wanted to do in his retirement, but he could not imagine riding the the senior leadership team, treadmill, all the hours, all the stress, all of that for the rest of his life. So for the next 5 years, because he knew it was just wearing him down emotionally and affecting his relationship with his wife and kids. So, he discovered his purpose in 7 words or less. And what a shock that for somebody who spent his entire life in communications, his purpose was make it simpler, right? So that's what he did every day in his job. He was taking sort of complex stuff that the university was doing and making it simpler so that people could digest it in one form or another. And his epiphany was, I've made my life complex. And I've made my life complex for a variety of reasons that don't matter to me now. Like, I've been on the senior leadership team for years. I've had the prestige of that. That's not a priority anymore. And
Yeah.
what he did is he gave himself the permission to take a step backwards career-wise. And he went
Mhm.
and he applied for the job of, um, staff writer for a technology not-for-profit. Now, he wasn't applying to be the VP of marketing or communications. He just wanted to be a staff writer and earn the salary of a staff writer for 5 years, and then he would meet his financial goals. And so he did. He resigned, he got that job. He punched in at 9 o'clock in the morning, and, he did tippy-tappy all through the day, and he punched out at 5 o'clock, and he didn't think about his career. He didn't think about his job again until 9 a.m. the next morning, and he loved it. And then he
Yeah.
retired, and he moved out to the West Coast. He and his wife are out there. He's published his first novel. So he sits out on his deck with his computer, looking out at the woods.
'Cause he made his own life simpler.
That's right, because he made
I
his own
love
life simple.
that. Yeah. That just cracks me up because I've always said, like, we run around loving people in the way that we wanna be loved, and I think that so often we organize our outer world to reflect what we really want our inner world to be, but we don't address the inner world. We just keep chipping away at this outer world in the way that we show up
Right.
for others, the way we work, whatever, when really if we just turn the mirror a little bit, we could be much happier by making our insides match what we're trying to do on the outside.
Well, so I'm doing I I totally agree with what you said, but I'm just gonna flip it around, which is make your outsides consistent with your inside by learning who your inside is,
Mhm.
right? And then when you know who your inside is, then you start to make your outside conform to that. But you
Right.
can't make your outside conform to that until you know. You've gotta be able you need words. Right? You need words. You need to be able to say what it is in order to then go through the practice of making decisions that are based on your purpose. You need to be able to say what your purpose is. And
Yeah.
so in Purpose You, which is my online course, I take you through a step-by-step process to define your purpose. The one thing to identify the one thing that makes you uniquely remarkable at your essence. We define it in 7 words or less. And then, you learn how to live your life aligned with your purpose.
I love that. What are other ways that like what do I mean, I know that we want people to go see your course, but what is one thing that someone who just has no because I'm thinking of someone in particular that I've known in my life that I think because I always felt this like mighty purpose, it was seen as like the only way to have a purpose versus just like intention of how you want to like show up. So what is one thing that could help people today understand that it really is it can be as simple as you want it to be. It doesn't have to be I want to go change the world, I want to be Mother Teresa, whatever. How can someone start to understand how to define that uniqueness for themselves?
I answer this question the same way for individual people as I do for companies, because companies often say to me before we get started doing a blueprint, they'll say, what should we do to prepare? And I say, consider this question. If everything you do is a means to an end, then what's the end purpose? And so I just want to say, if everything you do is a means to an end, what's the end purpose? And so for both individuals and for companies, it makes them aware that there is a level above just the what you do and say on a day-to-day basis, right? And your purpose is not in what you do and say. Those are all the manifestations of your purpose. So as a
Mhm.
business, the products you make or the services you do, how you market yourself, how you service your customers, how you do manufacturing, all of that um, is the means to an end. What's the end purpose? And then the same with individuals. I do this, I do that, I do the other thing, I believe these things. What so if all of that is a means to an end, what's the end purpose? And so what that makes you start thinking about is, um, first of all, what you do is not your purpose. You know,
Mhm.
if you have a wonderful life volunteering for charity, none of those charities that you volunteer for are your purpose. There's something higher up, right? And I learned, I read a great book, and the author had a metaphor in the book. The author was talking about, or the book was talking about three people: a mathematician named Gödel, an artist named Escher. And a lot of people know Escher is the guy who does those sketchings that are sort of optical illusions. And then Bach is like, Bach had a few hits in his day on the piano.
A couple,
And
yeah.
he described those as three shadows cast from the same stone. And the book attempted to describe the stone. Not surprisingly, it was a philosophy book. But I loved the metaphor that those were three different things, but they at their root had a commonality, right? And to me, that's what your purpose is. Your purpose is the stone. And then everything that you do and say, whether you're an individual or whether you're an organization, everything that you do and say is a shadow that's cast from that stone.
Mhm.
So, not everything you do and say is going to be exactly the same, but they're all going to reflect the stone, which is what you want, because the stone is the one thing that makes you uniquely remarkable.
Yeah, I love that. Well, tell us where we can find you.
You can find me at Purpose U, so that's like Purpose University, PurposeU.ai. And, the reason that it's the .ai domain, PurposeU.ai, is that this is an AI powered course. So as I walk you through the course, or as you go through the course, you've got me on one side holding your hand, and you've got Wordsmith, our AI agent, holding your other hand. And through these videos, they're all like 2 minutes, 5 minutes long, but I give you detailed explanations and instructions. And then you go to the workbook and you do an exercise. Then you come back and you watch a video. Then you go to the workbook and do an exercise. When you're in the workbook, Wordsmith is there to help you with your answers. So you may be able to answer everything by yourself. But when you can't, when you need a better answer, the other thing that Wordsmith does is that when it's presented with a lot of data, it can figure out the common threads, and that's a critical process in the course, is for it to help you identify common threads in a bunch of raw data about you that we bring out in the course. So that's
Yeah.
what the course it brings out. For step one is to bring out raw data about you. Step two is to, between you and Wordsmith, look at that raw data and come up with your purpose in articulated in 7 words or less.
Nice. I love that.
So you
And
don't have
then
to
do
do
you
it
have,
alone.
like, socials or anything like that that people can find you at?
We are just, in the process of gearing all of that up, so
Okay.
we're yeah, we're a little new at that game,
I understand.
but PurposeU.ai is the best place to go, and you'll get a detailed explanation of the course and the opportunity to sign up there, and I think we have it on discount right now.
Okay, awesome, and I'll make sure that I put that in the show notes too, the link, but
Great,
I
thank
always
you very
like
much.
to say it out loud too so that people can hear it first and then know where to look for it. Well,
That's
thank you
great, thank
so
you very
much for being on today. I've had such a good time with you.
Me too, Melissa, thank you very much.
Absolutely. I'm gonna press stop if you'll hang out for just 1 sec. Thanks for coming to Emotionally Unavailable. If you haven't already, like, subscribe, and share. Emotionally